Later, the two engines met Gordon and James and told them about Cranky.
Cranes are airy-fairy things. They need a lot of attention, like me, in fact, said Gordon.
You should see the situation from Cranky's point of view, huffed James. He's high up in the air, coping with wind, rain and baking sun. Then he looks down and sees you two little engines being annoying. No wonder he called you bugs.
But one night, everything changed. The engines were resting in the shed. "Listen," said Thomas. "Can you hear a strange whistling sound?" "It's the wind blowing outside our shed," replied Toby, "but I've never heard it like this before." "Do you know," added James, "if Gordon wasn't here now, I'd say it was him thundering by with the express." All the engines laughed, except Henry. "I hope the wind won't harm the forest." Henry's driver came to see him in the yard. "Trees have fallen on the line. We must help clear the tracks." Toby puffed slowly into the yard. "Hello, Toby," said the Fat Controller. "You do look glum." "I'm sad about the trees," said Toby, "and so is Henry. The forest is a special place to him. Now some of it is gone." "We'll soon put that right. I have an important job for you, Toby. I would like you to take some trucks to the forest." When the trucks arrived, Toby was delighted. They were full of splendid young trees, all ready for planting. "This is the best job I've ever had," said Toby happily. When Henry returned, he traffic engine. He can pull both trucks and coaches. He's proud of his smart red paint, and so is his driver. Everyone says you brighten up their day, James. One morning, James whistled loudly at the other engines. "Look at me. I am the smartest, most useful engine on the line." "Rubbish," replied Thomas. "We're all useful. The Fat Controller says so, and he's Sir Topham Hatt, head of the whole railway." "You know what, James?" added Percy. "What?" replied James. "You're getting all puffed up." James huffed away. Later, he was still boasting. "I'm the pride of the line." "I saw you pulling trucks today. You're only a goods engine," snorted Gordon. James was furious. "I pull coaches too." "Not as much as I do," grunted Gordon. "The Fat Controller has plans for me." James was only making this up, but Gordon believed him. "What plans?" Wait and see." "Oh dear," thought James, "now what'll I do?" Thomas was shunting shining new coaches. "Good morning, James. Are those coaches for me?" asked James hopefully. "No, these are for Gordon's Express. I'll fetch your trucks next." But James was going to play a trick on the other engines. "Actually, Thomas, I'm taking the coaches. The Fat Controller asked me to tell you." "What about the trucks?" Give them to Gordon." "Come on, Thomas," said his driver. "Orders are orders." So when James's driver returned, James was coupled to the coaches and he puffed away. Thomas returned with the trucks. A few minutes later, Gordon arrived. "Where's the express?" Thomas told him about James, and so here are your trucks. Gordon was very cross, and so was his driver. The other engines teased James. "I wonder who'll be pulling the express today," said Gordon. "I expect it'll be you," replied Henry. "James is stuck in the shed for being silly." James felt sad. The other engines all wanted to know about Oliver's adventures. "Oliver," said James, "has resource." "And sagacity," put in Gordon. "What does that mean?" whispered Percy. "I think," replied Thomas, "it's about being clever and wise. He is, finished Gordon, an example to us all. Every wise engine knows that you cannot trust trucks. The other engines warned Oliver, but he took no notice. You think I can't manage? He said huffily. Gordon knows better. He says I'm sagacious. You may be good gracious, or whatever you call it, but trucks can be troublesome and... Say no more, Duck, interrupted Donald. It's maybe a pity, but the wee engine'll have to learn for himself. Oliver pulled some loaded trucks to a siding and pushed the empties to the chute. Then he came back to take the loaded trucks away. They were comfortable and didn't want to move. What right has he to poke his funnel in here, they grumbled. We want Duck, or Donald, or Douglas. Look sharp, puffed Oliver. That's not the way to speak, hissed the trucks. We'll pay him out. Oliver heard nothing. The trucks moved smoothly at first, then suddenly Oliver felt them push forward. His driver applied the brakes, but they were useless against the surging trucks. On, yelled the trucks. Oliver fought hard, but still they forced him on and on. At last, the trucks grew tired. I'm winning, gasped Oliver. But it was too late. Oliver lay, bruised and bemused, bunkered down in the turntable well. Duck surveyed the damage. Hello, Oliver. Are you being a good gracious engine? Beg pardon, of course, but we really don't like this sort of surprise. Donald and Douglas will miss their turntable until it is mended. That evening, Oliver was hauled gently to safety. I'm sorry, sir, he said to the Fat Controller. I should have listened to Duck's advice. I don't feel good gracious, whatever it is. I just feel silly. Well, Oliver, replied the Fat Controller, now you know the damage trucks can do. Yes, I do, sir, groaned Oliver. I look like a load of scrap iron.
Ho, ho. Oh, I don't think so, laughed the Fat Controller. But you do need to go to the works to be mended.
The other engines now felt sorry for Oliver. The branch line won't be the same without you, whistled Duck. Come back soon.
Thomas the tank engine was ill. Workmen had tried to make him better, but it was no use. Edward must take you to the works, said the Fat Controller. Thomas felt very miserable. Then the Fat Controller spoke to Duck. I want you to help Percy and Toby while Thomas is away. Duck was delighted.
Hold! called the Fat Controller. I have an important letter to read from a little girl who is 5 years old.
Dear Thomas and all the engines, please can I meet you? My friends say they would like to meet you too. You could come to my house for tea, but my mummy says there aren't any railway tracks to my house. Can you come to the station instead? Thank you very much.
It seems, continued the Fat Controller, that there are many girls and boys who would like to meet you. Therefore, we are all going to the big city far away.
Hooray, hooray, the engines whistled.
Hold! called the Fat Controller. Other engines will be working here while you are away, so please show them what to do.
Later in the big city, all the engines were lined up in a splendid shed. The children were delighted to meet their friends. I'm glad the little girl wrote to us, whispered Thomas to Percy. Isn't it wonderful what happiness a letter can bring?
Gordon was cross. Why should Henry have a new shape, he grumbled. A shape good enough for me is good enough for him. He goes gallivanting off to crew, leaving us to do his work, and comes back saying how happy he feels. It's disgraceful. And there's another thing. Henry whistles too much. No respectable engine ever whistles loudly at stations. It isn't wrong, but we just don't do it. Poor Henry didn't feel happy anymore. Never mind, whispered Percy. I'm glad you're home again. I like your whistling. Goodbye, Henry, called Gordon. We're glad to have you with us again, but remember what I said. At the station, everyone held their ears. The Fat Controller held his ears too. Take him away, he bellowed, and stop that noise! Gordon puffed sadly away, but he wouldn't stop whistling until two fitters climbed up and knocked his whistle valve in place. That night, Gordon slunk into the shed. He was glad it was empty. It isn't wrong, murmured Henry to no one in particular, but we just don't do it. No one mentioned whistles. Thomas the Tank Engine wouldn't stop being a nuisance. Night after night he kept the other engines awake. I'm tired of pushing coaches. I want to see the world. The other engines didn't take much notice, for Thomas was a little engine with a long tongue. But one night, Edward came to the shed. He was a kind little engine and felt sorry for Thomas. I've got some trucks to take home tomorrow. If you take them instead of me, I'll push coaches in the yard. Thank you, said Thomas. That will be nice. Next morning, Edward and Thomas asked their drivers, and when they said yes, Thomas ran off happily to find trucks. Now, trucks are silly and noisy. They talk a lot and don't attend to what they are doing. And I'm sorry to say they play tricks on an engine who is not used to them. Edward knew all about trucks. He warned Thomas to be careful, but Thomas was too excited to listen. The shunter fastened the coupling, and when the signal dropped, Thomas was ready. The guard blew his whistle. Peep, peep, answered Thomas, and started off. But the trucks weren't ready. Oh, 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 they screamed. Wait, Thomas, wait. But Thomas wouldn't wait. Come on, he puffed. All right, don't fuss. All right, don't fuss, grumbled the trucks.